I never imagined a simple knock at my door could turn my whole world upside down. I never thought a quiet tap on my front door would shift my life in ways I couldn't have pictured. "Hi, I'm Anna." "Hey there, my name's Anna." And just hours after burying my husband, I sat alone in a house so silent it hurt. Only a few hours after saying goodbye to my husband at his funeral, I was sitting by myself in a home so quiet it felt like the silence was pressing against my chest. Until Mark, my son's best friend, showed up unexpectedly, standing there under the porch light. Then, out of nowhere, Mark, my son's closest buddy, appeared at my doorstep, lit up by the soft glow of the porch light. Anna sat alone at the dining table, a long cold cup of coffee before her, her blank gaze fixed on nothing. I was perched at the dining room table, staring blankly at a cup of coffee that had gone cold ages ago, my eyes lost in empty space. The room that had once been filled with laughter was now weighed down by silence, as if even the walls themselves sighed under the burden of loss. This room, once bursting with giggles and chatter, now felt heavy with a quiet so deep it seemed like even the walls were mourning with me. Anna was no longer the strong, lively woman her friends knew. I wasn't the confident, spirited gal my friends used to know. Now in her early 40s, she suddenly felt small, lost inside her own home. Here I was, barely into my 40s, yet feeling tiny and adrift in the very house I'd always called home. She had lost her husband, the companion, the one who shared every joy and sorrow. My husband, my partner, the man who'd been by my side through every high and low, was gone. His passing was too great a shock, dragging with it not just the grief of a wife, but the feeling of losing a part of herself. His death hit me like a tidal wave, carrying away not only a wife's sorrow but also a piece of who I was. Anna thought she had prepared herself emotionally. I'd fooled myself into thinking I was ready for this heartbreak. But no, nothing could prepare her for this emptiness. But honestly, nothing could have braced me for this hollow ache inside. She let her hands fall to her lap, the ticking of the wall clock echoing like a cruel reminder of time passing. My hands dropped into my lap, and the wall clock's steady ticks rang out, mocking me with the relentless march of time. Everything had slowed down. The world around me seemed to crawl to a halt. Life had truly slowed down. My whole life felt like it was stuck in slow motion. Just then, there was a soft knock at the door. Right then, a gentle knock came from the front door. Anna startled. I jumped a little, caught off guard. She hadn't expected anyone in the evening. I wasn't expecting a single soul to show up that night. Most friends and relatives had come by during the day, then left, leaving her to face the long night alone. Most of my friends and family had stopped by earlier, offering their hugs, but now they were gone, leaving me to wrestle with the lonely night ahead. She stood up, walking slowly to the door, her heart sinking, a mix of surprise and caution. I got to my feet and shuffled toward the door, my stomach twisting with a blend of curiosity and wariness. When she opened it, standing before her was Mark, her son's best friend. I swung the door open, and there was Mark, my son's best pal, standing right in front of me. Under the porch light, Mark was no longer the lanky teenager who had once spent hours gaming in her living room, laughing loud and falling asleep on the couch. Bathed in the porch light, Mark wasn't the skinny kid I remembered, the one who'd sprawl out in my living room playing video games, cracking jokes, and dozing off on the sofa. Now Mark stood tall, mature, his eyes carrying a trace of life experience beyond his mid-20s. Now, Mark stood strong and grown, his eyes holding a depth that spoke of life lessons learned, more than you'd expect from a guy in his mid-20s. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Mrs. Anna," Mark said, his voice deep and sincere. "Mrs. Anna, I'm so sorry about your loss," Mark said, his voice low and full of genuine care. Anna tried to smile, but the tightness in her throat only let her manage a small nod. I tried to muster a smile, but my throat was so tight all I could do was give a little nod. She couldn't speak. Words just wouldn't come out. The grief had stolen her words. My sorrow had snatched away my ability to talk. Mark, a bit awkward, lifted a small container in his hands. Mark, looking a touch uneasy, held up a small container in his hands. "I brought some food. I made it myself." I thought maybe you hadn't eaten. I whipped up some food for you, he said. I figured you might not have had a bite to eat. Anna looked at the container, a pang tightening in her chest. I stared at that container, and a sharp ache squeezed my heart. Such a small gesture. It was such a simple act of kindness. And yet, in that moment, it felt like it cracked through the thick ice encasing her heart. But right then, that small gesture felt like it shattered the cold, heavy wall around my heart. Thank you, Mark, she finally managed to say. Mark, thank you, I finally choked out. She opened the door wider, motioning for him to come in. I pushed the door open further, gesturing for him to step inside. Inside, the house seemed to brighten ever so slightly with Mark's presence. With Mark there, the house felt just a tiny bit warmer, a little less dim. He set the food down in the kitchen, then turned back to look at Anna, his face full of concern. He placed the food on the kitchen counter, then turned to me, his expression brimming with worry. Are you holding up okay? You doing all right? He asked softly. Anna gave a sad little smile. I managed a small, sorrowful smile. I'm trying. I'm doing my best, I said. Her voice trembled, and her eyes glistened with tears she hadn't even realized were there. My voice shook, and tears welled up in my eyes before I even knew they were coming. Mark stepped a little closer, gently placing his hand over hers. Mark moved a bit closer and carefully laid his hand over mine. Not a polite touch, but a real one, steady, warm. It wasn't just a courteous pat, it was genuine, firm, and comforting. Anna felt a wave of heat rush up her spine. A warm tingle shot up my back. How long had it been since someone had held her hand? When was the last time anyone had just held my hand like that? Since someone had cared in this simple, genuine way? When had someone shown me they cared in such a plain, heartfelt way? She wanted to pull her hand back to retreat into her shell of grief. Part of me wanted to yank my hand away and crawl back into my cocoon of pain. But she didn't. But I didn't. She realized she needed connection, and she needed someone to remind her that she still existed, that she was still alive. Deep down, I knew I craved that human connection, someone to show me I was still here, still breathing. Would you like to stay for a while? Anna asked softly before she even had time to think it through. Do you want to hang out for a bit? I asked quietly, the words slipping out before I could second-guess myself. Mark nodded, his gaze gentle. Mark gave a soft nod, his eyes kind and steady. I'm here if you need me. I'm right here for you, he said. The two of them moved into the living room where the soft couches had once witnessed so many family memories. We wandered into the living room, where the cozy couches held countless memories of family moments. Anna sat down, pulling a light blanket over her lap, while Mark sat across from her, keeping a respectful but caring distance. I settled onto the couch, tugging a thin blanket over my legs, while Mark took a seat across from me, close enough to care but giving me space. In that moment, Anna felt her heart lighten just a little. Right then, I felt the weight on my heart ease, even if just a smidge. Mark's presence was like a delicate thread pulling her back to reality, a place where the pain didn't completely consume her, where she could still be seen, still be heard. Having Mark there was like a gentle tug, pulling me back to the real world, a place where my grief didn't swallow me whole, where I could still feel noticed, still feel heard. That night, Anna no longer felt entirely alone. That evening, for the first time, I didn't feel completely on my own. And from that moment, the story began to turn onto a new path, a path she herself had never imagined. And from that point on, my life started veering down a road I never could have pictured for myself. I eased the door open a little more. Mark, come on in. Honestly, I could use the company tonight. We wandered back to the living room together. I put a kettle on to boil and grabbed 2 mugs for chamomile tea, the kind I always brew when sleep feels miles away. Mark settled onto the couch, his hands locked together, his gaze drifting over the photo frames and the worn-out books that time had softened. You're into classic books, huh? Mark said, spotting the aged copies of Jane Eyre and Anna Karenina on my shelf. I gave him a weary smile. Yeah, I'm drawn to stories that aren't perfect. The rawer they are, the more they stick with you, making you think. I placed a steaming teacup on the coffee table in front of him. The vapor curled upward, mingling with the air like a cozy fog. We both picked up our mugs, sipping quietly at first. Mark broke the silence. I can still picture the first time I met him. His laugh was so big it nearly made me drop my game box. A soft chuckle escaped me, a sound my parched lips hadn't made in a while. That's how it always was, wasn't it? Warm, a bit rowdy. This house hasn't felt the same since he's been gone. Mark paused, then said gently, I get it, Mrs. Anna. I was just a kid when I lost my dad. You and your husband were the first to make me feel like I belonged somewhere. His words stopped me cold. I'd never thought of Mark as someone carrying that kind of pain. He was always so bright, so easygoing, like nothing could weigh him down. Some losses hide better than others, don't they? I said, my voice softening. Mark nodded. Yeah, sometimes we just grin and act like we're fine to keep going. I looked at him for a long moment. All of a sudden, the years between us didn't matter. He wasn't just my son's best friend anymore, he was a grown man, carrying the same kind of quiet scars I did. You've grown up so much, I said, my voice catching with emotion. No more little kid making a mess with milk in my kitchen. Mark grinned. I could still make a spill if you miss those days. We both shared a soft, genuine laugh, the kind that warmed a part of my heart that had been cold for too long. We sat there a bit longer, not needing to fill the silence with words, just two people finding comfort in each other on a night that felt too still. And right then, I realized healing doesn't always start with a big plan. Sometimes it begins with a hot cup of tea, a shared look, and someone who stays when the words run out. I leaned back in my chair, my hands wrapped tightly around the now cold mug of tea. The soft yellow glow of the living room light fell on Mark, showing a side of him I hadn't seen before, not the playful guy I remembered, but someone with a quiet strength and kindness I hadn't known I needed so much. Mrs. Anna, Mark said, pausing like he was choosing his words carefully. Do you ever feel like when someone's gone, they take a piece of you with them? I turned to him, my eyes stinging with tears. I've wondered that so many times. If I used to be happy, strong, how much of that person is even left in me now? We sat quietly, the clocks ticking loud in the stillness. A shiver ran through me, maybe from the chill or maybe from the question stirring deep inside. Mark noticed. He got up, grabbed a light blanket from the cabinet, and draped it gently over my shoulders. His fingers grazed my bare shoulder, and I flinched just a little. Thanks, Mark, I said, my voice rough, like it might break into a sob. No need to thank me, he whispered. I'm right here. I looked up, meeting his warm eyes. In a sudden moment, I felt this urge to hold on to something, anything, that could make me feel cared for, like I still mattered. You know, I said softly, I used to be so scared of fading away, of no one noticing me, like I vanished along with him. Mark didn't answer right away. He sat closer, his voice steady. I see you, Anna, he said, his eyes soft in the lamplight. I see you clearer than ever. My chest tightened, a mix of grief, longing, and something warm creeping in. I laughed softly, not realizing tears were already falling. Sorry, Mark. I didn't mean to fall apart like this. He shook his head, his hand resting lightly on mine. Falling apart's not a bad thing. I think it's when we're most real. His hand was warm, steady, and I held it tightly, like letting go would make everything disappear. The feeling shook me, stirred me. How long had it been since I let anyone near my deepest hurts? Mark, I said, breathing slowly. You're so kind. So kind it's hard to know where to draw the line sometimes. He didn't look away. If you need space, I'll step back. But if you need me, I'm staying. Those words, so simple and honest, felt like a gentle tap against the walls I'd built. I didn't speak, just leaned softly against his steady shoulder, letting myself breathe easier for the first time in ages. That night, surrounded by the smell of cold tea and untold stories, I learned that unexpected closeness isn't always something to fear. It's a reminder that even after so much loss, your heart can still wake up, still reach out, if you're brave enough to let it. I stayed there, feeling the quiet rhythm of Mark's heartbeat as I rested against his shoulder. I couldn't recall the last time I'd leaned on anyone like this. Since my husband passed, every touch, every kind word felt shallow, gone too soon. No one had lingered long enough for me to feel truly seen. Mark didn't say more, just kept his arm gently around me, like a silent vow, I'm not going anywhere. I took a slow, deep breath, the knot in my chest loosening. I looked up, catching his soft smile, not the goofy grin I knew from years ago, but a calm, patient one, like he'd been waiting to reach the part of me I kept hidden. Anna, he said, my name low and rough in his throat. Hearing it made my heart jump, like it had stirred something I'd buried too long. I started, then stopped. I didn't know what I wanted to say, or if I should say anything. I'd always held back, kept my distance, played the grown-up. But in front of those steady eyes, all my walls felt pointless. Mark didn't press, didn't question. He just reached out, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. That small, kind gesture sent a shiver through me, not from fear, but from a longing I hadn't felt in years, waking up slow and quiet. I looked at him, not pulling back. Our eyes met, and for a split second, I didn't want to overthink it, didn't want to worry about right or wrong, should or shouldn't. Mark eased in a bit closer, his breath warm on my skin, but he left just enough room for me to step back if I wanted. I didn't move away. Instead, I shut my eyes, letting that small gap between us fade as our lips met gently, carrying all the things we'd never had the courage to say out loud. At first, the kiss felt cautious, like we were both scared to break this delicate moment. But when I tilted my head a little, slipping my arms around Mark's neck, I caught his soft exhale, and then his arms pulled me closer, holding me tight. My heart was racing, no longer holding anything back, as this warm, intimate feeling spread through me, the joy of being held, touched, and truly wanted by someone who really saw me for me. Mark's hands, warm and gentle, slid slowly along my arms, in no rush, like he was just saying, I'm right here, and I want to be with you. I let myself melt into it, every wall I'd built up over the years crumbling away. His soft whisper in my ear, sweet words that made me chuckle through quiet tears, felt so tender. His lips grazed my cheek, brushing the little scar I'd always kept hidden, before finding mine again in a deeper, fiercer kiss, like we were done keeping any distance. In that quiet room, filled only with the sound of our pounding hearts and quick breaths, I realized how much I'd been craving this, not just being close, but feeling truly loved, without always having to be so strong. That night, for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like that lonely woman rattling around in a big, empty house. In Mark's arms, I found a piece of myself I thought was gone, the part of my heart that could still skip a beat, still love, still hope for the soft, surprising beauty life can bring. The soft glow of morning sunlight peeked through the curtains, painting warm gold streaks across the floor. I stirred, the unfamiliar yet comforting scent of the sheets hitting me, along with the gentle breath of someone against my neck. My eyes fluttered open for a second, confused about where I was, until the weight of a strong arm draped loosely around my waist stopped me cold. Mark. Memories of last night crashed over me, making my chest tighten. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to breathe deep and calm the panic creeping in. What did I do? A voice in my head whispered, not judging, just scared. I turned slowly, seeing Mark still asleep. In the morning light, he looked so young, so peaceful, like a memory that didn't fit in my chaotic life. I stared at his face for a long time, my hand itching to reach out and touch him, but instead, I gripped the bedsheet tight, too afraid to move. I sat up carefully, pulling the blanket over my shoulders. This room, once so familiar, now felt strange, like everything had shifted just a little overnight. My heart thumped, caught between sweetness and fear, squeezing tight in my chest. Was this a mistake? I wondered. I'd always been the strong one, the grown-up, the one who knew right from wrong. But last night, I'd let every guard down for a few moments of comfort, of feeling loved. Next to me, Mark stirred, his eyes blinking open. "Anna," he mumbled, voice still thick with sleep, but his eyes lit up with such warmth when they met mine. "I thought you'd slipped away." Those words froze me. I pressed my lips together, hands clasped tight, looking at him as my heart swirled with mixed-up feelings. "Mark," I said softly, my voice shaky, "last night, this." Mark propped himself up on one elbow, the blanket sliding to show his bare shoulder. He leaned a little closer, his eyes still soft with concern. "You don't have to say anything," he cut in gently. "I get it. If you're having second thoughts." I shook my head fast, my eyes stinging. "It's not that," I whispered. "I'm just scared. I'm older than you. I'm your friend's mom. If people find out, what'll they say? What'll they think?" Mark reached over, his hand gently covering mine, giving it a soft squeeze. "I know," he said slowly. "This isn't simple. But I don't regret it, Anna. I don't regret staying, holding your hand, loving you." Those words cut right through the walls I was trying to rebuild. Tears welled up in my eyes. "You don't get it," I murmured, my voice catching. "People will look at us and never believe this is real." Mark gave a small smile, reaching out to touch my cheek, his thumb gently brushing away a tear. "I don't care what they think," he said firmly. "All I care about is what you think, Anna." My heart ached and warmed all at once. I leaned my head against his shoulder, closing my eyes, letting myself soak in the calm, even if just for a moment. But deep down, a quiet fear still flickered. Could this happiness last? Or was this morning just the start of a storm full of questions I wasn't ready to face? I stayed there, my head resting on Mark's shoulder, his warmth filling the cold, empty spaces I'd carried through months of being alone. Even with my eyes closed, trying to hold on to this peaceful moment, my mind wouldn't stop whispering fears. Where's this going? Mark must have felt me tense up. He tightened his arm around me, his voice low and steady, warm and close. "Anna, you don't have to figure it all out right now. We don't need to plan the future today. We don't have to have every answer." I opened my eyes, looking up at him, my gaze torn between gratitude and worry. "But Mark," I said softly, my voice wavering, "I'm so much older. I don't know if I can give you the future you deserve." Mark smiled gently, his warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "You know, I didn't think about age once last night," he said. "All I saw was a strong, kind woman carrying too much hurt. I just wanted to be there for you, to help ease that emptiness." He paused, squeezing my hand lightly. "And right now, I still want that, not just for one night, not just because of a weak moment, but because I really want to stay. Even if it's just sitting next to you, listening to what scares you." I bit my lip, trying to hold back the tears prickling my nose. "You're so young, Mark. You shouldn't tie yourself to someone like me." He let out a soft chuckle, tilting my chin up so our eyes met. "Can you stop talking like you're not enough?" His voice was playful, but his eyes were dead serious. "You've shown me what kindness, patience, and caring look like all these years. You probably don't see it, but you helped shape who I am." My eyes widened, my heart trembling. I'd always seen myself as just a mom, just a quiet woman in the background of Mark's life. But somehow, I'd left a mark I never knew about. Mark took both my hands, his voice soft. "Anna, I'm not rushing you. I don't need answers today, tomorrow, or even next week. I just hope you won't push me away. Give me a chance to stay by your side, to show you that sometimes the most unexpected things can bring the happiness we're too scared to hope for." I sat there, my heart pounding, not just from fear, but from this delicate, almost forgotten feeling. For the first time in ages, someone was telling me I didn't have to carry all the weight by myself. I leaned my forehead against Mark's shoulder, letting my eyes flutter shut. "Thank you," I murmured softly. "I can't make any promises, Mark, but I'll do my best not to pull away." Mark's smile warmed the air, and he hugged me a little tighter. That's enough for me, Anna. We'll go at your pace. I'm not going anywhere. In that quiet moment, with soft morning light spilling into the room, I felt like I'd found a small haven. No matter how many judging stares or tough days waited outside, right here, I could catch my breath and remind myself I was still deserving of love. The weeks that followed didn't rush by or drag on, they just flowed. I'd wake up, brew my coffee, and gaze out the kitchen window as sunlight streamed in. But something was different now, Mark. He didn't vanish after that night, didn't fade away like a fleeting gust of wind. He kept showing up, always with that warm smile and those steady brown eyes. Sometimes he'd swing by with a handful of wildflowers he'd plucked from the roadside. Other times, he'd just sit with me in the living room, not needing to fill the silence, just sharing a calm afternoon. At first, I kept my guard up, not pushing him away, but holding back, like someone who's known too much loss to dive in fully. But Mark never pressed me, never asked for more than I could give. He was steady, like a solid wall standing strong next to a house weathered by storms. One afternoon, as I sat curled up in my armchair with a book, Mark walked in, a bag of groceries in hand. "I figured we're overdue for a pizza and movie night," he said, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I gave a soft smile, realizing his grin had slowly become a part of my everyday life. We watched movies, laughed, and bickered over silly plot points. I noticed the emptiness I'd carried for so long wasn't as heavy anymore. The grief from losing my husband still lingered, but it didn't choke me like it used to. I was starting to see that I could keep living, even with the pain. One evening, as we stood side by side in the kitchen, chopping veggies for dinner, Mark spoke up out of the blue. "You know, Anna, I don't think we're trying to replace anything. I think we're building something fresh, shaped by everything that's made you who you are." I froze, the knife still in my hand, and looked at him, my heart quivering. That's when it hit me. I wasn't scared of how I felt about Mark, but of betraying the memory of my husband. "Mark," I whispered, my voice thick, "you make me feel like I'm allowed to live again." He stepped closer, resting a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Because you are, Anna. No one's limited to just one shot at love or happiness." In the weeks after, I found myself smiling more. Mark coaxed me out of the house, to wander through the park, watch the sunset by the lake, or try cooking recipes we were both terrible at, but had fun messing up together. I still held on to my old memories, but instead of trapping myself in the past, I started weaving them into a new chapter, one that didn't erase what I'd lost, but used it as a foundation for what was growing now. Mark wasn't in a rush, and neither was I. We let things unfold slowly, gently, but with a quiet depth. Little by little, I began to believe that maybe I didn't have to let go of the past to find happiness. Maybe it was about holding on to the best parts and moving forward with a heart that had been shattered but still wanted to love. And just like that, I started healing, not by forgetting what I'd lost, but by learning to carry it in my heart while making room for the new, tender things life was offering. Mark didn't take anyone's place. He was the one who showed me my heart could still light up with joy, still feel warmth, even after so much pain. Life isn't just a series of losses. Sometimes, it's about finding the strength to take the hand reaching out, to remind yourself you're still here, still worthy of love. Have you ever had someone walk into your life, bringing a spark you didn't see coming? I'd love to hear your thoughts or stories if you feel like sharing.